Hi, film kids. We are doing film history part 2 in this lesson. So let's get started. Just to recap, we have made it from film history from 1890s all the way to 1908. So we watched the Great Train Robbery clips in class. We watched the early narrative films in class. A Trip to the Moon. We watched the actualities, all that stuff, and we have reached kind of the start of narrative films. So let's get started. Okay, so in 1908, this is the start of the silent period. This is the origin of the classical Hollywood style. It is very important that you remember D.W. Griffith is responsible for kind of creating what we know as silent movies. They developed movie genres during this time. So you had westerns, romance, scary movies, that sort of thing. They experimented with color and animation. And then they started doing feature-length films, meaning they started averaging about an hour, hour and a half instead of 10-minute films. And this is really cool. Walt Disney made his first cartoon in 1922, Steamboat Willie. So here's a clip from, here's a film still from the movie Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith. And that was really the first film that catapulted the narrative form. We will be watching a clip of that in class. So, there's a couple of styles of film that came about in the silent period, and one of them that's the most interesting is German Expressionism. Really popped about 1919 went until about 1931. Distorted, exaggerated settings, lots of crazy camera shots for the time, very highly stylized acting, overly done costumes and hairstyles and makeup. So this is a film still of a title slate from the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So as you can see already from the title slate that it's still weird looking. Here is a film still from the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Here's a film still of the film Nosferatu. Nosferatu was really important in film history. This is the first time seeing Dracula, a Bram Stoker novel. And here's a screwball comedy film still. So they still had comedies in the 20s. So here's another category style, the French avant-garde. Basically, these were kind of artsy films. So as you can see, this first one is from a film still, The Fall of the House of Usher. Here's a second film still from another movie of a very interesting camera shot. They really like to experiment and get artsy with their camera shots. 1924 to 1930, you had the Soviet montage movement, and this is when we really start exploring editing. The Soviet Russians used lots of montage where they fragment and reassemble footage to manipulate our perception. So basically, you're condensing time with a series of shots. So instead of making stuff last for as long as it actually lasts, so think back to Great Train Robbery, where as long as it took them to do something, that's how long it would be on screen, to now we're kind of condensing time, and think of films like Rocky, where it shows 6 weeks in 3 minutes. So here's some more interesting camera shots from early films. As you can see, they're all still pretty wide. And that's it for the silent period. So your big film names in the silent period, You had a documentary, the first documentary called Nanook of the North, and we'll be watching a clip of that. Cabinet of Dr. Caligari was very out there, weird, very Tim Burton style, and that's what German Expressionism is. It's a classic Tim Burton. Tim Burton is influenced heavily by German Expressionism. Nosferatu was based on the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker, but it really scared people, and you'll see when we watch a clip of it. D.W. Griffith, Birth of a Nation, is probably one of the most instrumental movies of the silent period. And then, of course, we have Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. Charlie Chaplin pretty much dominated the silent genre for comedy. We're going to be watching his film Modern Times, and we'll start that after our unit. I'm sorry, we'll start that after our clips. And so Buster Keaton is, he made the movie The General, where he rode on the train and did his own stunts, really performed for his camera. We'll watch a couple of clips of that. And so now we are up into 1927. So in our next video, we will learn about the transition to sound. And so silent films, it's important to remember that silent films were not silent. They had a film score track. They would either have a live orchestra that would play underneath the film as it was being shown, or somebody would set up a record player and set up the music as loud as they could. So the silent film really catapulted what we know as film today. Is we depend heavily on what we see. So that is it for today. We will start up next week with the transition to sound. Just a reminder, you will have a pocket quiz on this information next class meeting. Bye.